Chapter 5. The Effortless Path. The word attention comes from the Latin a, meaning to or towards, and tendere, meaning to stretch, implies a stretching or directing of awareness towards an object of knowledge or experience. Just as the sun shines the rays of its light on an object in order to illuminate it, so awareness directs the light of its knowing towards a thought, feeling, sensation, or perception in order to know it. However, just as the sun cannot shine its own light on itself because it is already standing at itself, so awareness cannot direct the light of its knowing towards itself because there is no distance from itself to itself. It is not because awareness is so far that it seems to be unknown or missing. It is because it is so close. It is closer than close. If someone were to ask us, relatively speaking, to stand up and take a step towards ourself, in which direction would we turn? We cannot take a step towards ourself because we are already standing at ourself. Nor indeed can we take a step away from ourself, because we take ourself with us wherever we go. Likewise for awareness. In order to know itself, it doesn't have to do anything or go anywhere. It doesn't have to direct its knowing towards itself, because it is already standing at itself. Awareness is too close to itself to know itself in subject-object relationship. In order for any knowledge or experience to be known, a knowing subject must stand apart from the known object, other, or world. Attention is the distance between the subject and the object. As such, the subject-object relationship is the means by which all conventional knowledge and experience are known. Everything apart from awareness, that is, all objects of thought and perception, is known by something other than itself, a separate subject of experience. But awareness is known by itself alone. Therefore, awareness's knowledge of itself is a unique kind of knowledge. It is the only form of knowledge that does not require the subject-object relationship. It is absolute knowledge. That is, it is the only knowledge or experience that is not dependent upon the finite mind, the apparently separate subject of experience. In fact, all relative knowledge and experience are derived from and are a refraction of this single, non-dual, absolute knowledge, just as the apparent multiplicity and diversity of the objects and people in a night dream are refractions of a single indivisible mind. In order to shine on the moon, the sun's light must travel a certain distance through space. But in order to illuminate itself, the sun doesn't need to go anywhere or do anything. The sun's nature is illumination. Just by being itself, the sun illuminates itself. In other words, for the sun, to be itself and to illuminate itself are the same. Illuminating itself is not something that the sun does. It is what it is. It is self-illuminating. Likewise, awareness knows itself simply by being itself, without the need for any other agency. That is, awareness knows itself by itself, in itself, through itself, as itself alone, without the need to rise in the form of mind or attention. This is what Barayani meant when he said, "I knew my Lord through my Lord." Awareness is our primary experience. That is, being aware is awareness's primary experience. Before awareness knows objective experience, it knows itself. In order to know something seemingly other than itself, such as a thought, feeling, sensation, or perception, awareness must shine its attention, the light of its knowing, away from itself, towards that object. But in order to know itself, it does not need to direct the light of its knowing away from itself. Awareness's nature is pure knowing. It is self-illuminating, self-knowing, self-aware. There is no difference between our own being and the knowing of our own being, just as there is no difference between the sun and its shining. Awareness knows itself simply by being itself. Awareness is so close to itself that there is no distance between itself and itself, and therefore no room for a path. Any path would be a path from awareness towards an object. From awareness to awareness, there is no space, no distance, no time, and therefore no possibility of a path or practice. Thus, being aware of being aware is a non-practice. That is why the direct path is referred to as a pathless path. In the direct path, we start with the goal and we stay there. That is, awareness starts with itself and stays with itself. Thus, the highest meditation is simply to be. For this reason, there can be no effort in this non-practice. Any effort would involve directing the mind towards an object or trying to control the focus of attention. Just as the stretching of a rubber band sets up a tension that is always tending to revert to its original relaxed condition, so attention, or the directing of awareness towards an object, establishes a subtle tension that is always tending to revert to its natural state of equilibrium. The desire for peace or happiness is the desire to return to our original, inherently relaxed condition. Meditation is the relaxation of the tension in attention, and the subsequent return of awareness to itself. It is the dissolving of the mind in the heart of awareness, not a directing of the mind towards any kind of objective experience. In fact, to say that awareness returns to itself is a concession to one who believes himself to be a separate self or finite mind and, as such, seems to be cut off from his inherently peaceful nature of pure awareness. For such a one, there seems to be a returning. For awareness, there is just a recognition. Meditation is not something we do. It is something we cease to do. Thus, it could be called self-returning or self-resting. Everything, apart from the knowing of our own being, requires some kind of activity. Thinking, feeling, acting, and perceiving are all activities of mind, although in almost all cases we have become so accustomed to this activity that it is no longer registered as such. However, being aware of being aware, awareness is awareness of itself, is the only truly effortless experience there is. Everything else, even breathing or thinking, requires energy. This is what Ashtavakra meant when he said, "For the sage, even blinking is too much trouble." Mind is the activity through which and as which awareness knows objective experience. Therefore, in awareness's knowledge of itself, being aware of being aware, there is no need or room for any movement or activity of the mind. There is no pathway from ourself to ourself. from awareness to awareness. Having no room for a path, and, therefore, no room for a practice, there is no room for a practitioner or a self to travel from awareness to awareness. We could only practice being aware of something apparently other than awareness. Indeed, the separate self or ego exists as the very activity that ensues between awareness and its object. The sun that illuminates is the sun that is illuminated. The awareness that knows is the awareness that is known. Meditation is between awareness and itself. It is simply awareness being itself, resting in itself, knowing itself alone, being aware of being aware. That is why it is said in the book of Revelation, verse 22:13, I am the Alpha and the Omega. I am the first and the last. I am the beginning and the end. T.S. Eliot referred to the same understanding in his poem Little Gidding, when he wrote, what we call the beginning is often the end, and to make an end is to make a beginning. The end is where we start from. In the direct path, awareness is simultaneously the origin, the path, and the goal. Being aware is simultaneously the subject that knows, the process of knowing, and the object that is known. Being aware is being aware of being aware. Awareness is aware of awareness. Knowing is knowing only knowing. Being aware of being aware is the essence of meditation. It is the only form of meditation that does not require the directing, focusing, or controlling of the mind. We cannot become what we essentially are through any kind of practice. Through practice, we can only become something that is not essential to us. We can become 50 years old. We can become tired. We can become married. We can become lonely. But our essential self-aware being is prior to all becoming, and indeed remains present, albeit usually unnoticed, throughout all becoming. However, once we seem to have become a separate self or finite mind, our essential nature of pure awareness seems to be missing, veiled, or lost. Therefore, from the perspective of a separate self, or temporary limited awareness, there seems to be a practice that must be undertaken, or a path that must be travelled, to find or know again our essential self, and, above all, to access the peace and happiness that are innate in it. Thus, as a compassionate concession to the belief in being a temporary finite entity or self, the non-dual teaching will, in most cases, encourage the practice of meditation in the form of self-inquiry or self-surrender. This point is often misunderstood in contemporary expressions of non-duality. In order to accommodate the experience of suffering, and yet maintain an apparently enlightened perspective, such a teaching claims, all suffering appears in awareness, but there is no one here who suffers, and therefore nothing to do. In such a statement, the non-dual teaching is being used in the same way that objects, substances, activities, states of mind and relationships were previously used, namely, to distract the apparently separate self from its suffering. In other words, the separate self has appropriated the non-dual teaching and is using it to perpetuate its own illusory existence. If we are suffering, it would be better to be honest with ourselves and investigate the one who suffers. After all, if we are suffering, we are, by definition, seeking. Doing nothing is not an option for one who considers himself to be a separate self. For such a one, there are only two possibilities: to seek temporary relief in objects, substances, activities, states of mind, and relationships, or to seek the source of suffering within himself through self-inquiry or self-investigation, which naturally leads to self-abidance or self-surrender. Thus, for most people, meditation, self-inquiry, or contemplative prayer will seem, at least initially, to be an activity that they as a separate self practice. And only gradually, as their understanding matures and their practice is refined, will self-inquiry give way to self-abidance, self-resting, or self-surrender. That is, only gradually, in most cases, will it become clear that meditation is what we are, not what we do, and that the separate self, or finite mind, is what we do, not what we are. Until this is recognized, meditation will seem to require an effort, and if this is the case, and for as long as it seems to be so, we should make the effort. In time, it will become clear that we cannot make an effort to be or know ourself. We can only make an effort to be or know something apparently other than ourself, and at that point, our effort will come spontaneously to an end. In order to clench our fist, an effort is required. But after some time of holding our hand in that position, the clenched fist will seem to be the natural condition of our hand, and we will no longer be aware of the effort required to maintain it. If we were now to open our hand, it would seem initially that we needed to make an effort to do so. It is only because the clenched fist seemed to be the natural condition of the hand that an effort seems to be required to open it. Once it is understood that the natural condition of the hand is one of openness, it becomes clear that the opening of the hand did not require a new effort, but rather the relaxation of the previously undetected effort of closing it. The separate self, or ego, is like the clenching of the fist. It is a contraction of infinite awareness into an apparently finite mind. Most of us have become so accustomed to the tension inherent in the separate self that we believe and feel that it is our natural state. And so from this perspective, it seems that we have to make an effort to know and rest in and as awareness. However, once our true nature of pure awareness has become apparent, we realize that no effort is required either to return to it or to remain there. In fact, we become sensitive to the subtle effort that the mind almost continually makes in order to maintain the illusion of a separate and independently existing self. As an inevitable corollary to this understanding, to remain knowingly the presence of awareness becomes increasingly our natural condition, until there is no longer a distinction between meditation and life. Effortless being is our natural state,